Welcome back to another episode of Soul Talk. I'm here with Nino and Jenna. We are soul sisters sitting around having a chat about presence today. Our first episode, we talked about devotion. There were some really good nuggets in there. So if you didn't catch it, go back and check it out on YouTube or on the Akashic Musings podcast. And today we're going to start just by chatting about what presence really means to us. This started to come up in the conversation last time as we were talking about devotion, and the word presence just kept arriving. And it was very clear that this was an invitation into our next topic. So I would love to just touch base with you guys and see what comes forward when we talk about presence. Like, what arrives in your field? What is it you want to share about presence as we get started today? Nino?
Helps you unmute. So, hi, ladies. Present. I went and looked up the definition, but I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to use it. For me, presence is not needing or wanting to be anywhere else but where I'm at. And that is including sensation, not just the physical location, but being fully in alignment with my soul, my energetic and physical body, and the space that I take, and how that relates with whoever else is in that vicinity. Because a lot of times I think we think about presence as far as I need to be here, and I need to have all of my awareness and attention focused on this one thing. But I think that defeats the purpose of presence. This presence is about experience. It's about feeling, and less about trying so hard to be totally focused on, I'm right here. Why are we trying to be present when the present is a gift? Why not experience the now? So that for me is kind of what was coming up when I was feeling into presence. And it had nothing to do with definition, textbook presence. I'm curious, Jenna, what your opinion on presence is.
It's very similar, very, very similar. Because what came to me also was alignment, and embodiment. The feeling of being not just within the body, but within your soul. And presence is not necessarily, like you said, where you are or at any given moment who you're with. It's the space that you're taking up and being receptive to it.
It's kind of like a witnessing, right? And I loved that you kind of added that word in, Nino, of experiencing, because it doesn't mean that when we're experiencing the presence of the space that we're in, that we are in acceptance. And I think that's where that can get distorted. Is like, well, if I'm like, because the way that you were describing it, Nina, was like, I want to be in full alignment with my soul, my energetic and my physical body, the space that I take, right? And we can kind of distort that with, well, does that mean that I need to be in full acceptance to be present? And it's like, you can be in recognition that you're not in full acceptance as you are witnessing what you are experiencing. Right? So yeah, so that kind of came forward for me as you were talking. And when I think about presence, for me, it's interesting because, I've been a therapist for a long, long time. And when we would first call people into presence earlier on in my career, it was about tangibles, like the 5-5-5 technique. Call yourself into presence. What are 5 things you can see, 5 things you can hear, 5 things you can touch, right? And like bring yourself into it. It was kind of like a grounding technique. And so I think that being in presence with ourselves is very important from a sensational perspective, like you were talking about, Nino, because it allows us to get more in tune with like those subtle cues that can inform us in terms of, you know, what we're meant to do next, or whether we are feeling in alignment with where we currently are in that moment. But I also think that it's presence with soul, like Jenna was saying too, like, and well, and you mentioned that too, Nino, but like being present with soul and with self simultaneously, right? Like being present with the holistic, because I think that when we do this, you talked about the word focus, Nino. When we do this, we're not focusing, we're witnessing, but as we witness, things come into focus, right? Focus arrives as we are witnessing in a space of presence. And that's why I say that presence is one of the number one things, if not the number one thing, that hones the third eye, that opens the third eye, right? Because as you're just being and witnessing and just receiving, like Jenna said, you know, and experiencing, it's then bringing all this data in that brings clarity to whether or not this moment is in alignment, whether or not where I'm thinking of going next is in alignment. You know, what is coming through? How is that feeling as I'm in presence and witnessing and experiencing? And so that was kind of one of the things that came forward for me, is that it really informs our expression in a way that allows our expression of who we are and what we desire, whatever we want to share, to be really dialed in, like to just be so much more intuitively discerned, because we've given it space to kind of arrive. How is this feeling?
Yeah, there was so much that was coming up. And earlier, I actually went into this little channeling state about presence because I wanted to have some more clarity around what was coming through for me. And it's funny, the things that I was writing down about what you're talking about, focus not being the goal, but focus arriving from presence, and how that informs our desires, allows us to be with our desires, it allows our desires to actually unfold, and how that only comes from our connection with both soul and source, are exactly what I was writing about. Exactly what I was writing about. And for me, what came up was it allows you to see source moving through all things so much easier. And that's part of that third eye opening, right? That third eye activating of, this is where we see the unseen, because we're not, what came up for me was, we're not hyper vigilant on our surroundings, which I think a lot of people try to do when they're in presence. At least the old way of thinking about presence was focus on the sensation, the 5 things you can see, that you can touch, that you can smell. You're almost in a hyper vigilant state, and you're using your nervous system. And yes, it can be useful for grounding, but it's not making you present in that witnessing of your entire being and its relation, right? And I think presence is about relation, like you said, to self, the source, and to everything around us. So that really was resonating in a way that I don't know why I didn't expect it, but I should have expected talking to you ladies for it to really come up. um, yeah, and I guess, Jenna, what are your thoughts before I rant on?
I'm just having this whole thing come to me about how often I'll look at presence as like a shedding of the nervous system in a way. Because, and I've said this to Laura before, just like in different conversation, but like when you say you're feeling a specific way or you're feeling a specific emotion, and I like to like do this thing where like I'll put my hand wherever I feel my soul in my body, and I'll like ask the question, like if I'm feeling sad or something, right? And I'll be like, who is sad? And then I'll be like, I am. And then I'll be like, well, what am I? And then the sadness kind of just goes away. But and that type of that energy that I've attached to kind of just sheds. And it's like, oh, okay, that's just the energy that I'm witnessing. And it's not who I am. I'm not of it, but it is within my field. And then that allows you to be more present with whatever the emotion is that you're attaching to. So that, I don't know, that's just been coming into my head as you were talking.
Laura, before you go, because I can see you thinking. Right before I got on this call, I was writing down, including being with your shadow and secret self, which is exactly what you're talking about here of when you can start to feel the energies moving in you, they're not all you, they're not you at all. There are things that you have attached to or associated with at some point in life, but they're not you. And being in presence allows us to kind of detach from it long enough to say, yeah, I see you. I can be present with you without defining myself by you. Right?
And it allows us to see everything else. Like not just the emotion that
Absolutely.
you're feeling right now. Like you're able to be actually present and not just present in that emotion, right? Or that specific instance or that specific occurrence. And then you start reeling and no, go, Laura, I see you. Go.
No, because we were talking about is that it expands consciousness, right? Like it expands consciousness. And this is exactly what I was going to say tonight too, that actually came to me, I think it was earlier today, which was this concept of like, that we can actually get stuck in presence. Like you're talking about, Jenna, where it's like, okay, well, so if I'm in this and you interact with it in the way that you were talking about with your body and things like that, it then does, it allows you to see everything else. It brings that clarity, like we talked about at the beginning. It expands your consciousness. And I think that sometimes we can get so seeped in presence of, okay, I need to be present with this emotion. And you almost can put on your blinders with presence sometimes, right? And that's not the ultimate essence of presence. The ultimate essence of presence is what you're saying, which is like, yeah, when I'm actually present with it instead of identifying from it, but present with the energy, as Nina was saying, right? Then it becomes a relationship. It's in relation to. I loved how you said that, Nina. Like it's in relation to when you're in presence. And so I love that because the ultimate essence of it is the expansive piece. And I think that we can sometimes think of presence as, okay, well, I'm here and I'm present here within my field or here or in this interaction, rather than this concept of like unfolding, ongoing presence in the context of living your life, right? Like, it's like, I think sometimes we can kind of get stuck in, well, I need to be present with this, but then we're like, we can almost become fixated on the sadness or whatever we've become present with, even if it's not something that's heavy or laden in our field. And it's something that is, hey, I got this download and I'm having this conversation with Source and I'm like so present with it that I've like tuned everything else out. And that can happen temporarily, but ultimately the idea is for it to expand the consciousness so that you bring this into the human space, right? You bring this into the human experience and you start to forward and live your life. Because I think we can kind of get boxed in with presence. All right, I'm going to stop talking now because I can feel thoughts coming. Who's thinking?
I'm thinking so hard right now. Earlier, when I was writing about this, I was talking about how when you become present, not stuck in presence, but when you become so present that you can feel your heartbeat, you can feel the drum of wings in your vicinity, you can hear the heartbeat of the earth and the breath of sky, and like you can start to feel the interconnectedness of all beings. That's that expansion, right? You're expanding your consciousness because now you're tuning into the interconnection of all things. And I was given this idea of like, this is what we call the string theory. I'm not going to get into all of that stuff because I haven't even read on the string theory, but that's the whole thing, like that neural network that we are, because it's so much more palpable when we're in presence, because now we have tuned into the fact that we are in that consciousness. And now we're not relaying in such a way that we're outside of it. When we're not hyper focused, we now get to be in that discernment of it is all me and I'm all of it, right? Rather than saying this piece, like even though we're not associating with the emotion of the energetic, we can still say this energy, while it is not mine, is still me. And I don't think, I know it sounds contradictory, but it's that duality of it is me, but I am not it, right? And the interconnectedness allows us to, like I said earlier, start to witness the movement of source in life. And when we do that, we start to see that all of life is our ally rather than seeing all of life as against us and as contrary to us. Because at the end of the day, all of these energies are just informing us and getting us into a space where it's inviting presence. And it's inviting the unfolding and it amplifies our co-creation.
Yes, I love that, because the other thing that I want to point out here, kind of on the heels of what I was saying too, is that this concept of informing and inviting us, we are always, and I think that's the crux of this, is that we are always going to be invited into interaction with other human beings and into living our lives in a way that is intentional and service-based and not just stuck here. Right? Because we talked about devotion last time, we're talking about presence this time. It's not meant to be contained within just our own field. Right? And so it's in that presence. We're also in that receptivity and that allowance that Jenna was talking about, that we're receiving the invitations. We're letting the invitations, the sensations that come forward in presence to invite us. Jenna, what's coming up?
Just more about how it's allowing us to be in a perpetual now, that we are everywhere all at once. And when you are present, you get to feel that, and it feels quantum in nature. Yeah, I was really thinking about what Nino said, and I'm trying to decide if I agree or not about the attaching to specific emotions, but I do, because at the same time, I mean, it's all energy, right? So I'm just like,
I know, because I kind of see it as the sadness is not mine. It doesn't belong to me, but it does have information that will benefit me. And in my presence with it, my energy is also interacting with that frequency, right? And then being delivered to the collective consciousness as well. So it's that co-creation that Nina was talking about. And so it's like witnessing that. It's just like if I channel for somebody else. If I channel for somebody else, I'm not bringing through a download for myself, right? It is not mine. I don't identify with it, but it's coming through me because there is medicine within that for me, right? But it is not mine and I don't identify with it. And it's technically not theirs either. It's just an energy that's coming into the awareness of us both that is not, and this is where we can obviously personalize a lot of things in our healing journey, where we think it's about us, or it means this, or now I have to make this decision, or now I have to make this move, or, what do I do now? And instead it's like, well, why don't you just be in presence with the energy as it is interacting with your field, right? And that perpetual now, like you're talking about, Jenna. And whether you think it's for you or not for you, it is an energy that is currently present. And in that, there's an invitation that we may not understand consciously or not, but we get to just be present with and allow it to play kind of in the background of our field, of the universe, because in some way it's coming into creational form. Maybe it needed to touch my field to come into creation for somebody over in freaking Hawaii. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't necessarily know the outcome of that. But does that make sense?
Yeah, and I was gonna say, at the end of the day, we remember that we are a walking frequency of medicine. So if it comes to us for any reason, it's for whoever we're going to interact with at some point in time, whether it's in a direct conscious format or if it's in this unconsciousness of just by my mere frequency of being in a certain vicinity of you. And that's whether I'm in the same room as you, or maybe we're just in the same building because our frequential energy bodies are so vast. We have no idea how that's interconnecting with other people, right? Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, no, I feel that so deeply because it's true. It's like, and this is why, and oh goodness gracious, don't we all get stuck in this? But it's like, this is why it's so important to not personalize stuff, because when we're truly of service, we can bring something through and feel like a shit show sometimes, right? Or feel like we're creating a shit show or in the midst of one interrelationally, and we put so much meaning on this. Well, what does this mean? And where is this going? Instead of just recognizing that we're simply catalyzing energy. And this could be entirely in service of their awareness or of the awareness of the space between, right? And it could have nothing to do with me, or it could be some awareness for me. I don't know. But I love that because I think that when we're really in service, we get to recognize that our field is here to deliver whatever is present. And we're going to have greater knowing of that at some layer when we are in presence with the subtleties of energy. And I think the subtleties are important. And again, not subtleties that we are focusing on getting and grabbing, but ones that are arriving. Jenna?
I agree. What? I agree.
You got some faces, dude.
I was thinking, I was having a lot of thoughts. I'm just organizing my thoughts. But I do agree. I do agree. Hmm. Nina, what are you thinking?
I think now is a really good time for me to give you guys the actual definition.
Oh shit. Yeah, drop it
Because
on.
there's a lot of things that we said that we danced around that's in definition. And so I was looking at presence. And of course, it's being present, being part of space within the immediate vicinity. Presence is also of a visible or concrete nature. It is the bearing or carriage of a person. It is the quality of poise and effectiveness. And is felt or believed to be present. And then if I looked at present as a verb, it is to gift, so present, to gift, to offer, to show. It is existing or in progress, and it is involved. All things that we touched upon in some fashion. Go ahead, Jenna.
I was just making like that last part when you were talking about a gift. I was thinking about how we are literally just seen as like when we are in presence, we are the true eyes of source, is what came into my head. I'm just being with that.
I like that because that in a much more eloquent way you stated I was thinking, which was like, I love that concept of like an offering and a gift. And it's when I'm in presence, I am taking full responsibility for the subtleties and refinement of my own energy, not from a place of perfectionism, from a place of the fullest authenticity that I know myself to be in that moment. And in that, I'm gifting that first of all, that invitation to other people to come into the same. And I'm also giving all of me, right? My full presence and presence with someone else as an extension of my presence with myself allows them to receive all of me as I am in that given moment, which is the biggest gift, right? Because when we do that for other people, we're, again, not only just inviting them forward into their own, but we're coming into authentic co-creation. We're coming to authentic exchange, and which will catalyze their own presence with what's coming up within them and allow them to refine their own edges. But it's of deep service.
Yeah, this is hot. I like this a lot.
Oh, I think we can stop there. What do you guys think? Do you think we can stop there, or is there anything else within that definition that we want to, or that you wanted to touch on, Nino, that we didn't speak to?
Yeah, I think the two that really made me ponder were the bearing and carriage of a person, which I think equates to what we were talking about as far as our frequency, our actual energetic body is that poise, it's effectiveness. We are more effective in our service when we are present, when we are allowing the inspirations, the source wisdom to come to us because we're now open to receive, right? And that means that in being open to receive, we're also open to give more of ourselves and to radiate farther out than if we were like that presence of what we consider now was that boxed in, I'm so focused here, but now you've covered the dome of how many people you can really impact. And by becoming the carriage of energy, becoming the carriage of presence, we start to radiate out the size of impact that we can make. Hello, kid. Hello. I got distracted. So that one came through for me as far as the definition. And then I think I combined them really, bearing and carriage of person and their effectiveness. That was really the thing that came up for me.
Yeah, and the only other word that I would kind of add in there, which is, I mean, splitting hairs at this point, but it's like efficiency too, right? Like I think it's efficiency because I think that that's when we're in presence, it's that honing of that discernment so that our expression becomes more informed, right? And not just from, we don't have to question whether we're coming from the mind or whether we're coming from the nervous system, or you know what I mean? Like we know that it's all taken into account when we've chosen to be in this present space and really spoken from a very refined place, which really just means an intentional space, and an intentional space that is not necessarily just guided by us in human form, but by the holistic picture of all that we are. Yeah, I like that. I think that's a good place to stop.
That was solid. Yeah.
All right, cool. So I already have an idea for our next episode. So stay tuned, you guys, and we'll be back for another episode of Soul Talk. But thank you so much for joining us. And please, we're always welcoming your feedback in terms of what does presence feel like to you? You know, what comes alive within you as you receive this? And I think too, if there's any questions around the practical application of this, right, to bring that forward, because I think that that can, you know, we're talking very high consciousness concepts here a lot of the time. And we gave some examples of how this can present in your day-to-day, both in relationship with yourself and with other people. But obviously everybody's experiences are very different. So if you have any questions that come up, feel free to drop them in the comments, and we will see you very, very soon. Have a beautiful day. Bye.